What's going on, you all? John here, and today we're going to be reviewing some of the worst reptile enclosures that I've ever personally seen online. It's going to be a pretty short video, and I've just been literally saving these videos for like the past 3 years or so. So we've got a lot to go through. This is just going to be the first part. But we're actually going to start with my own enclosure, and this one was for my Sudan plated lizard. I had like a whole plan about how to go about building this thing. I wanted a pond, so I used Flexaseal. Didn't check to see if Flexaseal was even reptile safe at all, but I used it. Thankfully, it actually didn't hold water, and so I removed it. Um, Flexaseal is actually safe, but at the time, I literally didn't do any research at all. This animal actually was an impulse buy, so I literally had nothing set up, nothing. I was at a reptile expo going to get some geckos to breed, and saw a pair of Sudan plated lizards. I was like, hey, those look pretty good. Was talking to the breeder. He told me how he kept them and whatnot, which isn't the best pair. I know that now because I do want to get some in the future. But I bought them, brought them home same day, and then kept them in like a tub system until I built this enclosure, which also wasn't researched. I literally was just using what he had told me. And as you can see, it's a nice enclosure. Not lots of plants, branches everywhere. The soil itself wasn't deep enough. They do like to burrow, and I could see that after a few months. They were trying to burrow holes, especially because I didn't put any, like really any caves for them to go into. Or the one that I did end up keeping because the other one was dead at the Reptile Expo. I'll see if I can find clips of that. But I added leaf litter, and it looked really good. It wasn't big enough, in my opinion, at least, for him, but it was pretty well set up. I let the plants establish themselves, and within a week and a half, this is what it looked like. It was barren. The leaves were everywhere from him trying to burrow. He was comfortable with me at this point because obviously in that tub system, I was able to handle him and make sure he was well acclimated to me. But this is what it looked like literally within a week and a half. Most of the plants gone. You can see some of the grass shoots still alive. But pretty much everything's barren. And this is him eating some apple. One of his favorite little treats, and one of the few things he would actually take from me and eat from hand. And that's pretty much it. I would say this is terrible. Not enough humidity, no places for them to really change their temperature. And overall, just not the best setup for this specific species. But compared to some of the stuff I have saved, this looks like a heaven set enclosure. So let's go ahead and move on to probably one of the worst examples that I've ever seen. And this is for a leopard gecko. Now, this is what I used to breed. This one specifically looks like a Murphy patternless. And this is just a all around a terrible enclosure. I don't know if this is from a breeder or not. I would hope this is from a breeder. Even then, this is a terrible setup, especially that substrate. If you're breeding, you probably want to use like paper towel or like paper specifically. But that looks like sand. Maybe the picture just isn't high enough quality, but that looks like sand. That is terrible. It doesn't even look like the reptile can actually get into its hide all the way without having to lift it up. And that water looks very dirty, even though you don't need to keep leopard geckos with water. But nonetheless, I'd say this is probably one of the worst leopard gecko enclosures. It looks smaller than a 5-gallon tank. So that looks like a Murphy patternless, but for a gecko of that size, even if you're breeding, that's just way too small. Just completely too small. Next, moving on, I don't know if I said that picture was from Reddit. These two are ones I've actually seen in my area. And these are for American alligators, I believe. For babies, this is all right, but as they get older, they're definitely going to need more space. And I would say tile probably isn't the best. Sorry about the short clip. I would say tile isn't the best because obviously it's not really providing humidity or anything like that. But overall, not terrible. Even this one, which is locked up, Um, is it terrible? Pea gravel probably isn't the best. They may accidentally ingest it, but American alligators are pretty smart, so I don't think that's an issue. Not as much an issue as this take, which what's a green iguana in what looks to be nothing bigger than 100 gallons? Yeah, that's the serious problem. Green iguanas in and of themselves, yeah, you really can't keep them inside unless you have a whole room really to give them. Uh, Specifically because they're very active, they move so much, and they get massive. So outdoor enclosures are pretty much mandatory for these guys unless you do like a really big and cool inside setup. But something like that, that tank, that lizard is almost as long as the tank itself, and it literally can't even turn around. So yeah, small water dish. I'm pretty sure green iguanas are semi-aquatic, or at the very least, they're very, very adapted to water. So such a small water dish for an animal that literally coexists and lives in water and always around water is kind of insane. And the desert background really isn't helping their situation at all. Green iguanas are also arboreal, so like there's no place for him to get up, there's no water for him to go in. It's just not a good setup at all. For green iguanas, you're gonna want something like this outside, nice and big, something like this, like an inside enclosure where they have plenty of space to get up. You can kind of see that water space in the back. So yeah, that enclosure is just completely inadequate for a green iguana. Same with this one. I don't know what it is. Green iguanas just always seem green iguanas, bearded dragons, and leopard geckos. Although leopard geckos, it's a lot easier to care for them properly. But specifically green iguanas and bearded dragons, those are the two that I always see getting mistreated or kept wrong. I'm literally part of the problem. I used to keep three bearded dragons, and I kept them incorrectly. There was enough space. Uh, and obviously, bigger is always better in most situations. But I didn't have UVB on them for a long time because I didn't know they needed UVB from what I was told at the pet store. There was just a whole lot of stuff. I had red lights. Their care obviously got corrected once I learned more about it. Um, and so they're doing good now, or at least the one that is still currently with me in Charleston. But yeah, ignoring all that, this green iguana enclosure is literally it's just as bad as the other one. At least this one has some space to get up that looks like it could potentially be UVB, which daylight lizards that are out basking in the sun need, like it's a requirement. They will get bone disease. Uh, and he has veggies, no water. His water dish looks to be under the branch, completely covered in dirt, and the box is still on the tank. So that should kind of tell you enough about that. Next, we're gonna be looking at an animal that is literally everywhere. They're actually invasive here, in my state. I'm pretty sure I've seen a couple of them in local ponds where they should not be. Red ear sliders. And if you're looking at these enclosures, or looking at the enclosure I'm looking at, this is atrocious. These animals can get pretty sizable, and they're stuck in this glass tank with not enough water to submerge. It looks like there's no lights at all for heat, for UVB, and it looks like they're swimming in their own filth. Although that could just be algae. Algae's fine. It doesn't really mean the tank's in disarray. But that looks like a case where the person is about to take the turtles, let them go in a native pond, and ruin an ecosystem, because these guys really do outcompete a lot of native turtles. So yeah, turtles in general, I don't think are something that should just be easily purchasable for how big they can get, how difficult they are to keep properly because of the whole water system and the amount of filth and poop and excrement they excrete. So yeah, being able to pick up like turtle for $5, if that. Sometimes I see people giving them away for free because nobody wants them. After you keep them for a few months, people typically realize that they're a lot of trouble and a lot of work. Yeah, the turtle I had was a diamondback terrapin. He's a cool little guy. I don't get him up here in Colombia, but in Charleston, I used to find them and catch them all the time and release them because I think they're you can't legally keep them anymore unless you already had species or you purchase them, but you can't just pull them out of the wild. Thankfully, same with box turtles here in South Carolina at least. And I used to have a small little diamondback terrapin, and he was a hassle to keep up, but I had a pond, so I was already running it, already coexisting, so it was pretty easy to for at least me to manage him. Just feeding, making sure to clean the water a lot. You have to clean the water a lot. They poop a lot, but this is actually probably one of my favorite animals I know you're not supposed to have favorites, but one of my favorite animals I've ever kept. He was very inquisitive. I don't know if he was smart or to say, but he was curious about everything. So yeah, I love diamondback terrapins. But turtles in general, I would stray away from. I don't actually have any plans to keep any turtles after him. He's just turtles in general are just very difficult to keep. Not difficult to keep or keep alive, but difficult to keep right. And finally, to end this video off, looking at the screen, you can see what I'm looking at. Um, yeah, this doesn't really need much explaining. This is a ball python on wood chips and in a glass enclosure. And I don't know why he's out in the open, so I'm gonna assume there's no hide in it from what I can see. That looks like a water dish at least. But yeah, clearly the complete rock setup. That's a tropical species, and it looks like it's being kept kind of like woodland with light, like literally one light, no UVB. Um, yeah, that is not the best setup for a ball python, especially now in the year 2024. Even the pet stores know that that's not a good setup, and don't keep them like that, and don't suggest that. At least around here, the majority of the pet stores don't suggest stuff like that. But wood chips on ball pythons is insane. You can't keep humidity; it's gonna grow mold on it, and eventually your animal's gonna die. Although ball pythons can live very long times in terrible enclosure setups because reptiles in general just thug it out. But yeah, that's the end for this episode. I'm gonna leave you all with this picture. This is how we're gonna start off the second bit of this series. But yeah, anyway, if you have any suggestions for how I can improve this style of video, let me know in the comments. I'd love to read them and get better at making content like this. But yeah, anyway, new video coming out in a couple of days about creating biomes in like micro ecosystems. But yeah, look out for that. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.